from a commercial and creative standpoint, they maintain a lot of that control. As a filmmaker, I'm already kind of setting myself up behind the eight ball because I can't really execute the story I want. I can't really get as many points on the back end because I've just signed this deal because it's the only way I'm going to get access to funding. So they're kind of already not being set up from success from the get-go.
Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Izolda Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak-performing innovators in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces. I also bring you ideas and techniques that you can grab and use to set goals, create, and unlock your potential for changing yourself and the world. And now let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Izolda Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to this guest this week because, first of all, he seems like an excellent person. But second of all, he's doing things that are cutting edge in Web 3.0, in NFTs, and in movies, which you know how much I love movies. So this is so exciting for me to get a chance to see where this is going to go, how things are going to go. Let me tell you about Jake Fraser. Jake is the head of business development for Mogul Productions, and it's a decentralized finance and NFT marketplace platform for the film and entertainment industry. He's got over 10 years of experience across lots of industries such as sport, entertainment, and crypto. He's helped build several successful businesses and specializes in sales, marketing, product development, and strategy. Jake, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Izolda, thank you very much. Stoked to be here and appreciate the intro.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely. And I am a cinephile. I love movies from the very early ones like Metropolis all the way to the cutting edge stuff that's happening today. Although it seems to me, learning from you about NFTs and the movie industry, that I am obviously not on the cutting edge anymore. I thought I was, but I am not. And you are doing things that are just, you're moving the goalposts, if you will. So I would love to chat with you, first of all. Can you do me a favor before we even talk about you? Can we talk a little bit about what an NFT actually is in case someone here doesn't know what it is, and what is decentralized finance and how it applies to the work that you're doing?
Definitely. Fantastic. Yeah, so it's a great couple of questions to sort of frame the rest of the conversation. So firstly, NFTs, technically they stand for non-fungible tokens. And I know that can be a bit of a mouthful for a lot of people, but basically, the problem that they're designed to help solve is that it's digital ownership of an asset. So, obviously people own houses, they own cars. So you think of it's a form of tokenization that it's independently verifiable on a blockchain, which is a new form of technology. So the easiest way I can describe it is that it's a verifiable piece of ownership, and that asset can be assigned to anything physical, anything virtual. It could be an experience, it could be a ticketed event, it could be a piece of art. So it's basically the underlying technology that represents the ownership. So that's an NFT. Mm-hmm. In regards to decentralized finance and how it applies to what we're doing, basically what that is, it's designed to take out a lot of the middleman or third parties involved in financing films. So for us specifically, we provide a service where we're giving our community access to independent filmmakers, and we can actually green light new projects and screenplays and stories, giving our community the ability to vote on different projects that can be turned into a cinematic release. And how that's done is by using I'll get into this later, I don't want to get too technical, but we have a native token called STARS, and that's used to that's a utility-based token which is used to vote on films, and that helps with the financing and get them greenlit for production. So that's kind of like the two high-level points there in regards to DeFi NFTs.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot there. And you said that people can vote on what is going to get greenlit, which fascinates me because how do you give them a movie poster? Do you give them a synopsis? What does a trailer? What does somebody get to see before they vote on which of these movies? And how do you get to be someone who votes on them?
Definitely, yeah. So the process for the voting component is actually we have this portal which is called Showcase, and what Showcase is, it pretty much enables the creators to submit their story, which typically has like their screenplay, actors attached, if there's any existing financing, when they're planning on shooting. It's like a whole package of the film's IP and their plans around that. And then we basically have a team of really respected like Hollywood producers that have been like Oscar and Emmy Award nominated and winners that sit down and they review everything that comes in. And then what we do is we create a short list, say it's a top 3 films, and we say, here you go, guys, here's the top 3 films, present those to our community. And then they typically have access to like a trailer or a synopsis or a screenplay as well that they can listen to or they can view. And then the process is with taking part in the voting is that it's called staking the tokens. So when I mentioned before, STARS is the Mogul Productions utility token where you can interact with our platform. So for example, to make that simple, let's just say I want to vote on film number 2, and I would put my tokens into the voting pool, which get locked up, and then those funds go towards helping the financing of the film. So that's kind of like an overview of how that process works.
Wow. Okay. So that sort of brings up the question, if I vote for a movie, and I know we're getting into the weeds right away, but this is so fascinating to me. If I vote for a movie that does not get produced, like it comes in number 3 out of the top 3 and it doesn't get made, what happens to my STARS tokens?
You can unstake them. So you can unstake them at any time, basically. So you're not really into anything unless you want to be. It's all just, power to the user.
I hear that a lot, power to the user, that the user has so much more power than somebody else telling them what they can and can't do. And I love that. And I guess I want to jump around a little bit and go, you're a product development strategy person, marketing person, sales. How are you also a cinephile? How did you get into working with a company that's trying to do something so cutting edge in the movie business?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's my background's mostly in sports and entertainment. So I have been exposed to a lot of different film productions in the past, and previously I did a lot of marketing with sports athletes and organizations. But yeah, I guess crypto, it has been around for a little while, but I think it's only really the last couple of years that a lot of people from external industries have kind of like made the pivot, because there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of new products being developed, and it's just a really exciting, good atmosphere to be involved in. And yeah, I'd kind of just been involved in crypto for a few years, just as a personal level, investing and stuff like that, with my own kind of like on my own time and money. But yeah, just kind of a really good opportunity popped up with an amazing project, and like to try and tie that in with my experience with sports and entertainment into the blockchain space, and sort of onboarding the next generation of film lovers and entertainment people into the world of crypto.
I love that. And it's interesting. The technology itself is pretty new. I don't know all the ins and outs. Somewhere around 2013, I think, is when it got invented. And now we're sort of into this space where the average person like myself, I am a minted NFT artist, but on someone else's thing, right? I just supplied the art. And I have to admit, it's very confusing to me when you're talking about, oh, this is an NFT. It's a way of making sure that there's ownership on the blockchain. And you mentioned something that I thought was fascinating. You said that physical products could be owned or held on the blockchain. And I am curious as to how that works when we're talking about movies, when we're talking about something anybody can see, anybody can pirate. How do you then say, oh no, this is actually owned by person X? If I can go watch a movie and download the movie, I mean, there's so many places that can do that. How do you do that? How does that work?
Great question. So I guess there's a variety of different use cases and industries on what this applies to. But in regards to proving the ownership, I'll kind of give an example to simplify it. I could go, down to the city and take a selfie in front of a $20 million mansion. Say, hey guys, post on Instagram. check out the new mansion I just bought. How cool is this? But when it actually comes to me selling that, I have no leg to stand on because all I've done is take a photo. So it's the same thing. If you were to go and take a photo of the Mona Lisa, you can say, oh, I bought this. But when it actually comes to selling it and you're getting in front of prospective buyers, you don't have anything to lean on. So my point is that in the art industry, for example, it's all about verifiability, and you're taking out the legwork of relying on people in person to go and appraise a piece of art. It's all done online, and it's independently verifiable, and it's not attached to any person. So that's kind of like a couple of examples of the ownership side of things. And in regards to films specifically, typically the space at the moment, there hasn't necessarily been like ownership of a film. There has been a little bit, but it's mostly been around having experiences attached around that IP or the film. So for example, it could be like a red carpet film premiere where you own that one-of-one experience that's like independently verifiable or owned on the blockchain via the NFT. So that's like an example, because at the moment there hasn't really been enough. I'm not going to say not enough demand, but we're still so early where it's called fractionalized ownership, where that's like, hey, if you got 100 pieces of a film that 100 people own, like I own 1% of the film. It hasn't quite got to that stage yet. We're mostly building stuff around that to bring people in, get new experiences, and bring them close to the action with everything production related.
Yeah, I've heard of that. As far as I'm concerned, it's called a utility, as I recall, and that is the sort of the benefit that you get around owning a particular NFT. It might be a one-on-one experience on the red carpet. It might be a one-on-one interview with one of the stars of the movie, things like that. You might get gels or whatever from the movie set. Whatever it is that can be promised can then be delivered, and that is your utility for owning that particular NFT. And I think that's great. How do you all decide what sort of utilities are going to be offered to the people who are buying these NFTs?
So typically what we are, we're a marketplace. So we don't necessarily own the IP. We're just a vehicle to enable creators to sell theirs. So in regards to the film industry, that typically depends on what we have access to. So for example, like whether that might be, 10 FaceTimes with a lead actor, or it could be, maybe one signed version of a script, or it could be a behind the scenes video from production that's only viewable by the people that own that specific NFT. So it really depends on the film or whoever owns the content, or the underlying intellectual property. And then we can kind of disseminate that and pick what we think would resonate best with the market and the audience that we're trying to put that in front of.
Yeah, and I imagine that the audience for different films would want different things. Like if Harrison Ford were in a movie, yeah, I would love to own an NFT that allowed me to have lunch with him. But someone who is not a Harrison Ford fan, although I don't know who that could be, would not want that kind of an NFT. So the market decides, and the people decide who are going to be buying it in some way, what those utilities would be as far as being most beneficial to the owners. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
Okay.
You hit the nail on the head.
Awesome. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a concept that you mentioned, and you gave me all this paperwork, which I love because I'm allowed to do then research and go a little deeper, but I want to talk a little bit about unlocking. I'd love it if you talk about what that is and what that innovation is going to do in the NFT space.
Yeah, absolutely. So to elaborate on that, for those who are sort of new to that area, it's called like unlockable content, or unlocking, as Izolda said. So what that means is that when you own an NFT, for example, that enables you access to certain things or experiences or products because you have that underlying NFT. So
okay,
that can be in the form of like gated content. So sort of what we're touching on before, where only, like, let's just say there's like 100 NFTs and you're one of those 100, and those 100 people are the only ones that get to see this gated piece of content from behind the scenes film with The Rock. where he's like doing a personal video to you guys as NFT holders, like stuff like that, where that and where that's housed in terms of content, like that can be anywhere, usually somewhere that has like a security where not anyone can just watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like one example, like gated content. Also, it could be like ticketing. So if you're going to go to like a music concert, and then you've got your NFT might be like a tier 1, and that could get you backstage with the lead singer, or it could get you like a certain form of seat, or it could get you some merchandise attached to that concert. So basically, it's like, in a nutshell, it's as I keep harping on, it's kind of like that ownership, and then but what it provides is that all these sort of peripheral benefits and utilities and experiences, they're attached to this NFT. And it's basically like the sky's the limit. Like you can add anything into it as long as you can execute it logistically. So that's kind of like a bit of an overview of what unlockable content and unlockable is. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. It sounds to me like we've already actually talked about it, and I just didn't understand the concept. So unlocking is the action or the ability to access those utilities or benefits that you get by owning an NFT.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
okay, got it. Yeah, because I look at it and I go, okay, I can sort of see unlocking gated stuff where only certain people are allowed. It's like different tiers of ownership, right? If you get the free version of something, you get a certain bit of use of it. But if you buy the next higher tier, then you'll get more access, more benefits, more usability, and then so on and so on and so on. And I guess the question I ask about this is, let's say you have this NFT that allows you to go talk to, I'll say The Rock. Why not? He's awesome. That allows you to have a one-on-one with The Rock back, on the back lot of the movie he's making, and you've paid $1 kajillion for it. What is The Rock's motivation for going, yes, absolutely, I'll come and talk to this fan for 15 minutes who has paid for the privilege of coming backstage and talking with me?
Well, so it's a couple of things there. It really comes down to, in this circumstance, I was probably a bad example for me because he's the biggest movie star in the world. But typically, what happens is that we usually partner with like a film or an artist or a music recording artist or whatever. But whoever we do the agreement with, they, like, let's just say it's a film. So they've obviously got with their lead actors, they've got X amount of publicity and PR opportunities that individual is doing as part of the promotion of the film. So, so whether that's an interview with a podcast like yourself, or whether that's with a journalist or whatever, an NFT experience would just be built into the deliverables of that actor, for example, that's taking part in the film, and it's just rolled into the promotion. When you start dealing with individuals specifically, that might be more of like, if we could do a campaign just with an actor, then it's kind of like that they can do as much as they're willing to provide the community. So it just depends on who we're working with, but typically whoever owns the agreement or the IP or the film, that would be dictated the deliverables, like, with them from the get-go.
Right. So when you're talking about IP, you're talking about intellectual property, and that notion of ownership then becomes a little bit more, I guess, diluted when we're talking about the crowd funding the movie, right? So I own the intellectual property. I've written a screenplay that's gone through your process, and it's been upvoted and people have voted for it to be made. They don't own the IP for doing that, but how are movies going to change if the crowd gets to decide on which movies are made, and how much creative control does the crowd get? Like, do they get to then vote, well, I know you're trying to get The Rock for this, but we're old souls and we want Harrison Ford in the lead role. Not that would ever happen, but you know what I mean. How does that work? And how do the creators, that are the people who've written the screenplay, who are directing all of that, doing the cinematography, even the acting, how do they respond to the crowd getting creative control versus the director driving the way the movie is made?
This is an excellent question. You've definitely done your research, and I appreciate that. So with okay, so the first part is with creative control. So with that specifically, with the model that we have, the filmmaker maintains the creative control because like they're basically the professional. They produce movie, etc. And in terms of what role the audience, the community plays, they ultimately get to decide what gets made. Like that's kind of like the phase one.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving forward, as the platform matures and the scales, there will be more additional things they'll be able to have a say on. So as you said, like maybe that's a lead actor, or maybe that's the location of where it's shooting, or it could be, it could be a variety of different things. But ultimately, I think anyone who's really into film, they can appreciate the artistic quality and I guess skill set of a filmmaker, and they kind of happy for them to do their thing. They just kind of like not buying in, but they're just supporting the story. It's kind of like if you're going to go on a crowdfunding website and you don't necessarily want to execute that, or you don't want to own that, but you really like the story, you want to get involved and via a variety of different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the first stage in enabling people to do that.
Sorry, I should have told you this earlier. I take a moment sometimes when there's a lot to think about. You said so. I'm just thinking through. They call it dead air on the radio, but I call it anticipatory air. Like, give me a second. I understand exactly what you're saying, I think, and I love the way I said that. I understand what you're saying, I think, but there is something that what you're doing right now is they really only decide what gets to be funded. But if we extrapolate that, it feels to me like, are we heading to a place where the most popular person or the most sort of richest person will get to decide a lot of this stuff disproportionately?
Yeah, so that's another good question. So the way we prevent that from happening is that, as I said, I don't want to get too technical, but we have this like basically almost a proprietary technology called quadratic voting. So I'll send you through a link up, is if you can attach to the footnotes of the podcast.
I'd love that.
So what that is, it really prevents people being able to screw around with the voting mechanisms, and it's all very like what's the word, like for lack of a better word, like decentralized. Like it's very governed by code. You can't tamper with it, and everybody, depending on whether they have 100 tokens or 1,000,000 tokens, it's kind of like, yeah, everyone has an equal voice in regards to what they want to see made. So that's really important with how we came about the ideation of the voting mechanism, because it needs to be true and it needs to be authentic. So that's kind of like the first thing that I would say around that, for sure.
So the way I look at it is, if you've got these tokens and if you're voting, I love this conversation. This is so cool. So I have 1,000,000 tokens. Somebody else has 10. Can I put all 1,000,000 tokens behind the movie I really want to see made while that other person only has 10 to put in? Or do we each only put in 1 token and hope that other people put in their single tokens for our respective movies that we want to see made?
You can do either or.
Okay.
So you can do that, and typically how it works, like obviously this isn't financial advice for anyone, but typically how the model works is that up to 50% of the net profits from the film, they get distributed back into what's called a smart contract, which is basically just like a pot of funds, and then the community basically own that pot of funds, and they get to decide what they do with that. So that could be investing in another film. They could take the funds out. They could put it towards something else. It's kind of like puts the power back into the community on what they want to have the funds directed towards, if that makes sense. So
it does. And what if some people want to invest in a movie and some people want to take the money and run? Can they do that, or does all the money have to go towards one thing?
Yeah. So it basically like comes down to typically, I don't know if you've heard of what's called like a DAO. So we're kind of like a semi DAO. That's basically just, that means it's like a decentralized autonomous organization. So that
Hmm.
basically means that whatever the majority want, you typically, it's kind of like a democracy where if you vote for, Republican or Democrat, like the majority typically gets, they typically win.
Hmm.
But there's a variety of different variables and ways you can kind of set that up. But to answer your question, yeah, typically you can segment it and split it out. Or if someone wanted to wanted to take something off the table, they can unstake their tokens at any time, stuff like that. So yeah, it's quite versatile, and it's pretty nimble in ways we can structure it depending on
Ah,
the different films. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to make the transition to this next thing. If I am right now, it sounds like you're partnering with bigger producers, bigger studios to work this. If I'm an independent filmmaker and I want to get involved in Mogul Productions, is there an avenue? And if so, what is it for me as an independent, like someone who might get a movie into Sundance, for example, but not someone who's going to be up for an Oscar? So if I'm an independent filmmaker, do I have to be a relatively big name, or is it possible for me to get involved in something like this and get involved in the NFT space for funding my movies when I'm smaller?
Yeah. Again, excellent question. The short answer is both. So at the moment, we're primarily a curated platform. So what that means is that typically all of the projects that we release to our community are vetted by our team of producers, and it's more around stories that are have bigger stars attached. They've already got their shooting dates locked in. They've already got a really dialed screenplay. It's a bit more of an advanced production.
Mm-hmm.
Because we kind of went about that in the way that if we do that first and do it really well, it presents a better opportunity for longevity and scalability as we grow the platform, because we're using existing filmmakers that have had success in the past, right? So that's kind of the step one.
Mm-hmm.
But we also recognize, as part of our mandate, is that we want to exist to give the average, maybe there's someone's never done a feature film or a short film before that's gone to market, but we want to be able to provide the platform and the service for that person to achieve their dream and execute on that. So with that being said, what we're doing is we're actually creating what's called a new creator dashboard on the platform, which will be rolled out as part of our product roadmap, which enables anyone to come and submit their their story or create their NFTs on our platform, where they don't need to go through a vetting process. Basically, the free market can decide if they want to participate in that story or whatever it is. So as I said, so we are trying to hit both sides of the coin, but just the first side of the coin we're hitting first is the bigger films. Then the latter will be rolled out, momentarily over the next few months here.
That's awesome. It is interesting to me, looking at the bigger films. There are certain things. I'll go back to Joss Whedon and Dr. Horrible for a second, right? During the writer's strike in 2007, 2008, he went, well, I can't do anything. Let's just do all volunteer thing, completely no budget, and we're going to make this thing that ended up being such a huge hit for him. So they were lean and mean and got pretty much no financing except for what he put up with his own money. And then there are films that are tentpole blockbuster type movies that have $1 $300 million budgets or whatever that the studio expects to do really well, right? So somewhere in between all of that is the movie that you put a lot of money into, that a lot of people go, yes, we think it's going to be terrific, and then it flops. So when you are in that position, like the crowd has financed this movie, the crowd at Mogul, who are the people who upvote these movies, has said, yes, this is going to be great. But this isn't the 8 billion people worldwide, or of those maybe 4 billion go to see movies or something. This isn't all of them. They're not the ones who are going, yes, this is the movie I wanted to see made. They may have no interest at all in that movie. What happens when that happens?
Yeah, look, I think it's so I'll go back a step. So the actual premise of the of why we started the company was because we wanted to put the power back into the crowd. Because what happens, or not always, but a lot, is that studios or producers or whatever it is, that they make these films, but they don't actually know whether that's going to resonate with the viewer. And if it doesn't resonate with the viewer, then it's not going to be commercially viable, and no one really wins because no one gets to see the film, right? So with so a really cool story actually with for those of you that have seen Deadpool, which is kind of like the R-rated Marvel kind of action hero film. Anyway, so that was with Ryan Reynolds. He was trying to get that green lit for like 8 years, right? And that he's a huge actor. It's obviously the story has been around for a long time. Anyway, so the studios weren't even going to green light that or finance it because they just thought, oh, well, it's an R-rated superhero film, and that's not going to resonate with anyone, right? But that story or the trailer actually leaked on YouTube, and then like millions of people saw it, and they're like, how good is this? Like, why isn't this made into a film? So the only reason that got made into a film was because the community and the crowd were like, this is awesome. Like, how, so there was a demand for it. So where I'm going with this is that, yes, there might only be 50,000 or 100,000 people that vote on a film that wins on our platform, but you've taken a really important kind of analysis from the core people who are going to be going to view that. So it's like any industry, when you do your market analysis, whether that's for a car or for a phone or whatever, if you take a big sample size from the people that are going to be consuming that product, it puts you in a much better place to be, commercially and creatively successful. So that's kind of the approach we took with that.
I think it's a beautiful and elegant way to do market research. That's terrific. But they also get to put their money where their mouth is, and that's also terrific. So speaking of money, right now, there are producers who have to scrounge for the money and for the actual production of whatever film they're trying to make. That we hope will, I love movies and I want to see movies that are made that are good, get revenue, and so that their creators can keep making movies, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. How will this do that? How will NFTs do that? How will the work at Mogul do that for the entire industry? Like, not just for the producers and not just for the directors and writers, but for the key grip, for the best boy, for the person who smacks the little thing that says, "Hey, take 3" or whatever. How will NFTs help the people who are the working actors and the not the stars, but the working actors? What kind of revenue can they see from this, if any?
Totally. So I guess I kind of look at it as like two main parts. So you've got the creative side and the commercial side. So typically, as you alluded to just before, people that are independent creators, there is a huge uphill battle for getting access to funds and in a timely manner, and also just in general. Like, most stories and screenplays never come to fruition because it's just impossible to get in front of the right people. And there really is like quite a concentrated monopoly on film financing in Hollywood, mm-hmm. By the big studios, whether that's, I'm not going to say all the names, but you guys know who they all are. And what they've, it is just a very archaic model, but what that means is that from a commercial and creative standpoint, they maintain a lot of that control. So like, as a filmmaker, I'm already kind of setting myself up behind the 8 ball because I can't really execute the story I want. I can't really get as many points on the back end because I've just signed this deal because it's the only way I'm going to get access to funding. So they're kind of already being set up for not being set up from success from the get-go. So what we do with the platform and NFTs, it enables the creative control to be put back fully into the filmmaker or the producer or the director or whoever that is. And in regards to commercially on the back end, it gives them a lot more flexibility with when they're negotiating distribution deals or however they want to present their film to the public. They can also decide on, maybe they can, because they have a bigger slice of the pie, maybe they can pay their actors more, maybe they can pay their their assistants more, maybe they can pay the people at the food truck more. So it really just presents more options for people if they have a bigger slice of the pie from the get-go, because we've enabled this platform or launchpad that's getting them access to funds and financing in a new innovative way that wasn't previously there.
I feel like I should just go amen that or mic drop or something. I think that's really cool.
No, I appreciate it.
I do want to ask though, and this because as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, okay, so the commercial and the back end and all of that. This is a strange question, and it's probably a little out of left field, but you probably had to think of this. How are you going to address unionized people who expect a certain level of pay and a certain level of benefits and all of that because they're SAG-AFTRA or whatever it is? How does that work with this new way of financing a movie? And is it not related at all? I'm not sure. I'm asking the question because I'm like, oh, how would someone who's making union scale handle either extra money or this new way of making money?
Yeah, so typically when it comes to paying staff and so that would be on the ownership of the production. So just to sort of clarify, we're not actually necessarily producing the film. We can have assistance with the producers that we have that are helping bring that to life, but typically there is an independent production house or group of people that are executing the film, and then they they're in large partly responsible for what they're paying everyone, right? So and then that typically, if that is unionized, then that's unionized. But ultimately, we just want to present more opportunities for people in that industry, for it to be more sustainable, and people can get more stories off the ground and get it to the people that want to consume that.
I love the notion of getting stories off the ground. I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories, and I love this really. It feels like a more democratized way of getting the opportunity to make your movie if you've written a screenplay and all of that. Is there a particular path that a screenwriter would need to go versus a director or a producer would need to go if they wanted to be involved in the way Mogul is doing movie making?
Yeah, so typically it really originates from the story, and then as a secondary off the back of that, it's like, okay, well, who's attached? What's kind of the anticipated budget? And obviously, as you guys know, there's lots of different variables in the film industry, and it requires a lot of really talented people to execute it and make it work. But to answer your question, typically we can speak to anyone, whether that's a producer or a director or a screenwriter. And normally by the time they've applied via the platform, they do have a few of those different cogs in the wheel already secured. So if it was a screenwriter, they might already have an actor, or they might already have a director attached to their story, or vice versa. So typically we chat with people that are more of an advanced stage on bringing their story to life. But as I mentioned earlier, we've also recognized that doesn't work for everyone, and we want to be able to provide the launch pad for other people that maybe haven't done a film to give the community the opportunity to get involved.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. This is going to be a strange question, and you might go, I don't know, and feel free to say that. Yeah. But I have a friend who made a movie that he got greenlit, and it took place in the Firefly universe. If you know that universe, Nathan Fillion, Joss Whedon, all of those people. And he made the movie by getting permission from all of these people for the IP. He crowdfunded the production, right? The actual production of the movie was crowdfunded, and I think it was Kickstarter, maybe Indiegogo, I don't remember. So he was a brand new writer. He'd never written a screenplay before. He decided he wanted to do it, and he did it, and the movie's out, right? So that took it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of energy and all of that stuff. And on a very basic level, other than the fact that you are already working with more advanced stages of the production, what's the difference between someone who goes via Indiegogo and goes, hey, y'all, I want you to do this with me. I want to crowdfund this movie, and someone who goes through Mogul Productions and does it on the blockchain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically the main points there would be from a product standpoint. So a product and a technology standpoint. So firstly, on the product side of things, there's the ability to vote via the quadratic voting mechanism that I mentioned earlier. That's is sort of like, it's backed by that underlying blockchain technology that is really powerful. So there's that sort of things. And in regards to the whole like tokenization of assets and ownership, that's another thing that kind of is a problem that NFTs solve, is that, as I mentioned, like it actually provides genuine ownership, and it's also provides an opportunity to have a marketplace. So as an example, if I let's just say I buy like a behind the scenes NFT for a new blockbuster, and then maybe in 3 years that's maybe appreciated or depreciated in value, for that NFT, then I have the ability to sell that to the free market, and then so that kind of provides other peripheral opportunities with being a marketplace with digital assets, which obviously isn't there with an Indiegogo. And don't get me wrong, like they serve their purpose. I think they're fantastic, but this is basically just more of an extension, more comprehensive opportunities and avenues for for people to get involved utilizing new technology.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating to me that you're doing this, and I keep bringing it into the independent filmmaker or whatever, because that's who mostly the people who are listening are not necessarily in Hollywood. They're in Atlanta or whatever, and they're more sort of on the ground running to make things happen. And yet this has the potential, I think, to in some ways revolutionize it, especially once you get the more the secondary part of this, which is for newer filmmakers to have the same opportunities. I think that's great. I want to ask you, what does success look like for Mogul 10 years from now? What will it mean to Mogul to be successful? What will be your parameters?
Yeah, I think basically our mandate is to onboard people from the film and entertainment industry across to the platform via the new technology, and we're trying to bring fans and creators closer together. So having less reliance on third parties, making it more democratized, as you said before. I love that word. And in terms of looking down the line, as we build out the ability for people to submit their own stories and get that listed on via our creator dashboard, we want to be the go-to marketplace and platform for everyone in film, music, and fashion, where they can go and it's a place to it's like an incubator of stories and content where people can go and get that consumed, and also being the premier marketplace for NFTs in film and entertainment. And because we're kind of so early, in a lot of regards, we already are that. It's just because the mass adoption hasn't come across from the traditional film world. But in regards to what we're doing now, we actually are leaders in what we're doing. It's just, as I said, because we are still so early, there's still a lot of education involved. The product's continually evolving. For us, we just want to maintain that foothold and really scale as many users as we can. And we want to do that in making it easy for the average person to understand and kind of like get involved, for a user-friendly way. Like, without me rambling on too much, I want to try and give an example that might resonate with people a bit. So if you think with social media, like back in 2010, etc., like around that era, there was only really a small group of people that were using it. They thought, oh, it's just kids in college or whatever. And then it kind of got to the stage eventually where every business in the world was using social media for their marketing, for their community building, to drive new forms of revenue. And then, so now, like if you look at most businesses, they have a social media manager. It's built into their full strategy for their business. And so NFTs are kind of like that in 2010, where there was only a small group of people that were using it, and the early adopters, they got it. But for a lot of people, they're just like, well, why would I go on social media to text my friend when I can just call them? But now looking back, or looking at it now, it's just this completely intertwined with our lives. And if you would ask me what I think with the NFT space, and this is going, eventually every business, whether that's in film and entertainment or music or consumer goods, they'll have an NFT strategy attached to their product or experience or business that enables community development, marketing, and new revenue generation. So that's kind of like my macro view on the long-term development of the space in general.
Okay.
I guess that was a mouthful, but
no, it's great. It's great. I'm synthesizing the information. I'm letting my brain sort of go la 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 la. I think that that's a phenomenal way of looking at it, as far as, sort of likening social media to where we are now with Web 3.0. And yet something that I noticed is I remember watching everyone go from the boombox to the Walkman, to the iPod, to everything's on your phone. And now we're back at the boombox, right? And yet what they'll do for their boombox is they'll actually plug their phone into the shell that looks like a boombox so that they can walk around with a boombox like they were walking around with boomboxes in 1982. And so what I'm wondering about is how much of this industry that you are on the forefront of is cyclical. How much of this is going to be, now we're just going to go back to silent movies or whatever, into the NFT space? TikTok is a really great example of people, they're not talking, they're dancing to music that is being piped in through TikTok, right? To me, those are little mini silent movies. And so what do you think about this notion of some of this technology being applied to these very cyclical things, like people who they have their phone, but instead of talking on the phone, they actually have a headset that plugs into their phone that looks like it's the old style actual handset that you would use? Because there's something about us that wants to go back and revisit the retro of and vintage of the movie industry and the way we're making movies and the way we're thinking about them. How would NFTs and the project that you're doing apply to that cyclical nature?
Mm-hmm. That's I love that. So I've got a few thoughts around that question. So I guess firstly, in regards to being cyclical trends, that is true. Although I think as a general direction of at least the NFT industry, like this is here to stay. And the reason I say that is if you kind of follow the big money. So if you look at companies like Gucci, Nike, NBA, NFL, like some of the world's biggest companies, they're all having massive strategy. There's massive amounts of capital being put into this. And that, typically there's a lot of corporate governance and hesitancy with doing stuff like this. So that my point being is that there's already been so much diligence being done by these huge corporations that are innovating in this industry. So for that alone, I think it's definitely going to be here in a long term. And in regards to what it looks like on more of on a cyclical level, like I guess time will tell with trends. But one thing I'd like to touch on for sure is that if you think like now how much time everyone spends online, and whether that's a good or a bad thing, I guess it depends on the person. But the reality is, like, we're talking over Zoom, like since COVID, everything has been expedited into the digital world. It was kind of already there, but it's just been progressively sped up, I'd say. So where I'm going with that is that people, if you were meeting someone in person, kind of like what we wear and what we how we present ourselves as people says a lot about who we are in our physical self. So whether that's the car we drive or the watch we wear or the clothes we wear or the sunglasses, all of these underlying subconscious things that we choose, that presents who we are and who our image is. So with spending more time online, everyone's having these like NFTs that are basically digital avatars, and they're representing who you are in your digital self. And I know to a lot of people this sounds crazy because it's definitely the concept is weird. It's like, oh, it's my profile picture. Like, how does that NFT represent who I am? But the reality is, like, that's why people spend 500 grand on a Bored Ape photos, because they're associated with celebrity, they're associated with culture, and that's kind of like where it's heading from a trend standpoint as we spend more and more time online. So I just wanted to kind of touch on those points to sort of frame response to that question a bit.
Oh, awesome. I thank you for that. It is fascinating to me looking at the psychology at work of Bored Ape or some of these other NFTs that are incredibly valuable because we all say they are, not because they are, but because we all agreed that this one particular thing is going to be worth so much money, and it has value because we think it has value. Whether or not it actually does, because it's a bunch of ones and zeros, we all agree, and so therefore it does. There's a psychology at work there that just fascinates me. If it's okay with you, I would love to pivot a little bit and talk to you about something that you told me right before we started recording this, about the partnership that you have with Chavo Studios about the 100 Years of Hollywood. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what you envision happening with it?
Absolutely. So basically, in short, we've created this like 100-year commemorative celebration of Hollywood. So the Hollywood sign was created erected in 1923. And so, coming up to the 100-year anniversary, and given that we are having such a focus on the film and entertainment space, we're like, what's a really cool way we could help celebrate that and release some cool new products for the community? So we partnered with the animators called Chavo Studios, who are behind The Simpsons and a lot of big animation over the last 20 years, with like Rick and Morty and King of the Hill and stuff. And anyways,
King of the Hill, yay!
So, we're doing this. The first phase of that project is an NFT collection. So there's 1,923 of these like individually crafted characters that are like representative of figures of film and entertainment over the last 100 years, and it's all turned into these like one-of-one NFT collections. And then off the back of that, we're creating a metaverse, which is like a virtual world based around Hollywood. So those characters can go and live within that, and you can, for example, go to virtual film premieres. You can go to like virtual concerts in like AR and VR. You can participate in retail, where you can actually buy physical and virtual goods in this kind of like Hollywood virtual land. And
Cool.
then the third step for that is an actual animated TV show around all the IP attached to the first two things. So that's kind of without me going too much into it, that's a big project we're working on. We're really excited to launch that over the next couple of months.
Wow. Oh, I hope that by the time this episode airs, it is launched and we can add that link in the show notes. Speaking of the show notes, I would love it if you wouldn't mind. Tell me how. I'm gonna put the links to everything in the show notes. But if somebody goes, I want to be one of the voters, or I want to get my movie greenlit, I want to be part of this. How does somebody do that with Mogul Productions?
Yeah, so basically everything's on our platform, which is mogulproductions.com. So obviously on all the social profiles as well. You can check it out all on the website. So typically you go through that, and then how you engage with the platform is via our native token called Stars. So there's a whole kind of like education on there, how to get involved with, and basically what that enables people to do is they can buy and sell NFTs, they can vote on films, etc. There's a variety of different products that you can interact with. So that's kind of how people get involved. And then you can drop my email into the show notes as well. I'm more than happy to help any creators or aspiring filmmakers, or if people just have any questions in general, we'd be more than happy to answer, because if it's one more person we can get into the space that wants to learn, then it's better for everyone. So I'd be happy to help.
That's awesome, Jake. Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been fascinating. I'm super grateful that you took the time to be here and to talk about this. It's such a new technology. It might not be new to the people who have been using it for a while, but for me, I'm going, yeah, this is a whole new way of looking at entertainment and a whole new way of looking at movies and the movies that get made. I guess I want to ask real quickly, actually, are you going to do TV too, or just movies?
Good question. We're focused primarily on film, but we're definitely looking to incorporate a variety of different types of media. So yeah, we're looking at TV as well. So if anyone has any good TV stories, and shoot them through. So.
Yeah, I mean, because it's to me, TV is a way of getting really long form stories told, which I love. So I'm super grateful for that. Again, Jake, I'm really, really happy that you took the time to be here. I have just one last question before we get off this episode and then do the quick bonus episode in a sec. I have this one question that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and it's a strange little question, but I find that it can yield some profound results. And the question is this: If you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
That's a good one. I've never been asked that before. I would say back yourself. I would say lean into whatever you want to do and just go all in and just crush it and just don't hesitate.
All right. Back yourself. Don't hesitate. Lean in. Crush it. I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
That's awesome. We'd have to take up a lot of the sky with that. All right, cool. Jake.
You can take it what you will. It depends how much space in the sky.
Exactly. No skyscrapers, I guess. Jake Fraser, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be back in just a second, you and I, to do the bonus episode real quick. This is Izolda Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, please remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Izolda Trachtenberg and is copyright 2022. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind.